folks. Thanks for joining us again at My Combat Channel News. I'm the Yak Man, Ron Yakovetti.
FABIANO, the king of armbar.
And just for folks watching, if this is the first or second or third time you've watched, just so you know, the opening sequence of the show, that's how he gets dressed every day. Two hot women putting his shirt on. That happens all the time.
Why you tell my secret to everybody?
Because look at you. This is one of those shows you have to tell everybody how good looking you are, and then we can move on.
And we do audition for that as well.
Yeah. So if you want to get dressed, title belt optional. All right, so let's move on with the show. Rumble, baby, Rumble. We're going to talk about Anthony Rumble Johnson. 3-0 post-UFC. He was 5-2 in the UFC, yet usually it's 0-2, 0-3 somebody gets cut. He got cut anyway. Making weight was one of his big problems.
His last loss was in Brazil, last-minute fight, as I do remember, against Vitor Belfort.
Yeah.
You lose that fight and you get kicked out? Come on.
Yeah. He trains hard. You see right here, he's a machine. I think a lot of people had high expectations for Anthony Rumble Johnson. I was one of them. I got to interview him early on the Pro Elite days. Thought he would do bigger, better things, be one of the elite superstars like at St. Pierre, and then I think with making weight, I know that was a problem with Dana, and he may have fallen short of some expectations.
Well, but I think he's sticking himself in 205 right now, and as you can tell, that's a better weight for him. I think that's gonna cost UFC a little bit to get him back. You know, like the organization that he's fighting to right now is very happy with him, and I may be mistaken, but that's probably like 5 fight deals, minimum 3 to 5, and I don't think we're gonna see him back in the UFC for a little while.
So you think when he goes to go back to the UFC that he can name his price because of what he's been able to do since then? Or are they the destination everybody wants to be at, and he's going to pretty much have to accept what they offer him?
He's like, well, today is a great day to talk about that because we got a very good matchmaker in the house that you're going to interview that later, but we can bring that up. It's very risky for a fighter when you step out of the organization, like you step out and you try to recover your name into another organization. So basically, like you go to another organization, and if you do well, you can price yourself and get back in what else, in a big organization.
Yeah.
But if that doesn't do well, you can also find another job.
Yeah. I mean, he's done impressive things. The 2 losses he's had in recent years have been to Vitor Belfort and to Josh Koscheck, 2 very reputable and solid fighters. In his last 5 fights, 2 of those victories, including this last one now at XFL Fight Night 9, was by head kick. So I mean, he's putting on impressive performances. I think the weight cutting thing was a big problem for him in his UFC career.
Well, again, hopefully he, you know,
205.
205. That's the weight. You should know better. I fought 155 pounds twice. I lost twice, and that's proof that that's not the way for me. No, it's not. Definitely not the way for me. I went from 178 to 155. Everybody around me say you're gonna be like, you're gonna dominate that weight division.
Right.
I believe in everybody else. I make myself believe that also, and that was not the truth. I was like very sick, dehydrated, and it was the worst time in my life. It's like I lost the whole enjoyment of fighting to try to lose weight and make 155. So if I have a choice, perfect for me, be 160, doesn't have 160, so that next 5 pounds kill me, he probably has his reason as well. So that's my point.
So the thing that we're going to watch for as we watch Anthony Rumble Johnson's career rumble on is how comfortable he is, how his gas tank is, and how he performs at light heavyweight.
There you go.
Moving on to somebody who is very comfortable operating not only outside of the UFC, but not even comfortable with the existence of the UFC. Boxing promoter Bob Arum, him and Dana White have had barbs in the media with each other ongoing for a number of years. It used to be Gary Shaw at some point also, now he's out of the mix. Arum always taking shots at mixed martial arts, not a fan of the sport, and Dana White recently says, I'm not playing that game. Boxing did 475,000 pay-per-view buys at the Sergio Martinez, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. pay-per-view, and he says, great for boxing, the sport's excellent, I enjoy the sport, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here.
If I'm not mistaken, the last UFC did 550, if I'm not mistaken. So it's still higher than boxing, of course. And these days, that's the way it's supposed to be anyway. I think that always gonna be like that. It's kind of like two different gangsters.
Yeah.
You know, like it's two different gangs.
And there's
like,
one of them right there.
There's one right there, and another one who everybody knows very well, and that's gonna be like that. It's like they don't kind of like get it. At the end of the day, they are the same. Promoters,
Right.
they put two guys to fight and wait for people come to see or get together at home and pay for the pay-per-view.
Right, and boxing is part of the chassis, part of the machine that moves the vehicle. Without boxing, there's a missing piece to the mixed martial arts picture. It's one of the main disciplines that goes into the sport. So there's a respect for fighters from MMA and from boxing. But do you think, and this is what I think it's a turf war thing. I think that the older generations of boxing folks don't like the popularity of mixed martial arts. They're threatened for their tenure, so to speak, in the sport, and then they have to just, take a dump on this sport.
I spoke to some of these folks, and they don't want to even talk about it. And in my opinion, some of them, not all, but some of them could be very, very good at promoting MMA. They could. It could be like, okay, boxing is going down, let's change. But they don't even want to accept that.
Yeah.
They don't want to accept it at all. They want to stay away. They better don't even promote, don't even work anymore than go into MMA.
You know what's hard to accept?
We got to go.
Yeah, we got to go to a commercial. It's hard to accept that because we want to just keep talking. Welcome back, folks.
There we go.
To My Combat Channel News. We hope you enjoyed the break as much as we almost did.
Only happen when you're live. Anyway, we got good stuff to talk about. Like special guests in the house, don't go anywhere. You're gonna like this one. But now we got to talk about. He say
a little more Dana White. Spuke TV. Dana White using the word puke instead of pike or spike.
Got it.
The network that was once home to the UFC, Ultimate Fighter, did a lot for the channel. Of course, when the Fox deal goes down, UFC leaves. They go to a multi-Fox deal on FX, Fuel, Fox National, Regional, and then Spike left to run reruns of UFC, and then they have Bellator signed, but a non-compete clause. They're not allowed to run any MMA promotion until 2013. So what do? A lot of times when there's like a fight with like Dos Santos and Velasquez, for example, they run those guys fight, or they run fights of those guys losing if they lost before to counter-program the UFC. That's playing their game.
Well, you know what I see like similar to this situation is like when you marry a woman that you very in love with, and that woman give you two beautiful kids. They are everything that you got, and somehow that relationship doesn't go well, and you got divorced. Okay, that's exactly on this situation. Because if it was not from Spike, UFC not gonna be here right now. Maybe if they sign with somebody else, but the truth is, Spike on that time saved UFC. So if you wanna go ahead and talk trash, you wanna do what else you wanna do right now, it's a different story. But the truth we have to bring that up the truth. Okay, now if somehow they got UFC got too big for them, and they have to move it on. That's a different story.
Right.
But what's going on between one and another one, all I know is if you're not into this whole drama, we're here. My Combat Channel is here for you.
And we have some of the drama.
And we got fights from all over the world.
We do have that.
And fights that you never even thought about see before.
Yeah. We have a lot of things you haven't thought about here on this channel. Here's something you may have thought about if you've watched us once and you've been waiting for our top 10 countdown. This week, this day,
is the light heavyweight. Bring it on.
Hi, my name is Carissa, and you're watching the top 10 light heavyweight. At number 10, Forrest Griffin. At number 9, Quentin Rampage Jackson. At number 8, Ryan Bader. At number 7, Phil Davis. At number 6, Alexander Gustafsson. At number 5, Mauricio Shogun Hua. At number 4, Sugar Rashad Evans. At number 3, Leota Machida the Dragon. At number 2, Dan Henderson. At number 1, John Bones Jones. Hi, my name's Carissa Gary, and you just watched the top 10 light heavyweights.
He's definitely number 1.
Yeah, he's definitely, with or without that Santa Claus beard that he now sports, he is still definitely the champion of the light heavyweight division.
You proved that.
Now, of course, we have a very special guest you mentioned before. None other than Mr. John Peretti is going to be here. He's going to talk to us about the matchmaking of mixed martial arts, the history of the sport. Everybody's got a version of how the sport started. This is going to be the accurate tale of how things actually were. And the job of the matchmaker, make no mistake about it, different on different levels. Like UFC, a lot of money, so they can pay to fly people in. They can cover travel costs and stuff. Lower budget shows deal with stuff like having to pay for that and having to fly in and out and put up people in hotels for 8 to 10 bouts. Fighters that don't show, they buy them a plane ticket in a hotel, the guy doesn't come to town. Now they're out that fight and that money. Sometimes they don't have video and things for them to look up. Other fighters can't see them or they can't scout who's who. And a lot of guys apparently on the unknown level and the lower levels will lie about their records.
Oh yeah.
So you have to know your stuff to put somebody against somebody else and think on paper this makes sense.
We're gonna interview somebody that is to go and train with that person to see if that he was able to fight and he was telling the truth. UFC matchmaker.
It can be argued, some folks would see that earlier on in the UFC days, Art Davies was
and then he left. John Peretti, that's a guest for today. And then he left and left the job to Joe Silva that is right next to...
There is, next to Dana White.
That's why it's both speak together, because we kind of don't know who really does the match. So, you know.
You're going to hear a different perspective on that when we come back from the break. John Peretti is going to let you know exactly what he thinks his title ought to be called, the job he actually does, and really, again, how everything started.
Before we go to commercial, I want to let you know that don't go anywhere, because you're going to find out the guy that brought me here. He's the one signed myself for all my 7 fights in the UFC.
Wow, king of the armbar, king of all stories. After the break.
Make that happen.
Welcome back, folks, to My Combat Channel News. Fabiano and I are welcoming a very special guest. Excited to talk to you, Mr. John Peretti. You've been around the sport, you know things about the sport that people like myself who are new at it, even though I've been doing it for a few years, haven't even touched on. So, I mean, it's an honor for me to be sitting here just to hear what you have to say, and I know we have some questions for you.
John,
it's nice to be between you two handsome guys.
Too handsome, he said two. Not just you.
Yeah, like, I don't know about you. Anyway, guys, if you're home, he is the guy responsible for somehow me be sitting here talking to you guys, because he came a long time ago on Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu and offered me a fight against Frank Shamrock.
Wow.
That was the first fight.
Yeah, that was a tryout. You're absolutely right.
And then, lucky for me at that time, he realized that I was too small for Frank, and he gave me Laverne Clark later on the road, and that's how we kind of
fight.
Know each other, and like, and on and on and on. But not only responsible for me, about Like we can bring it on names and names and names, like, you know, like 150 of the 100 best fights, he's responsible for the matchmaking. So that's impressive numbers to keep it up all this year. Like, you know,
but you know, I don't think it's really an impressive stat, because I think it's a pathetic stat. Because if I haven't made a match in 15 years, and with all the money and all the wherewithal and all the availability and all the people that do this thing called mixed martial arts, why aren't there only one fight of mine that was great at this point in time? What's been going on for 15 years? Where are all the great fights? Where's all the great talent? Where's the scouting? You know, when you talk about your tryout for Frank Shamrock, I call it a tryout because that's what it was. In fact, I broke my pinky tendon, if you recall, that night on your solid rock head.
He came to the gym and say, I want to wrestle, I want to train with you, I want to see if you're able, you know, if you're going to bring it what we're looking for. And he did train with me. He's like, you know, he's a very good martial artist as well. And it's not like you got to go easy on him. You got to pull what you got. You know, like, and you're depending on that because you're trying to book a job.
Right. What is your background in martial arts? What were the first martial arts you did yourself personally? And then if you can give us a little bit of how you got involved with and out of working with the UFC.
Well, my background's diversified. You know, I started out in Taekwondo, and instead of going to one school, I joined 5 schools at once. I was a terrible, terrible athlete. In fact, my high school, my junior high school math teacher / football teacher, you know, he said that I was the worst athlete he had ever coached. With that in mind, you know, I was winning Taekwondo championships in New York, you know, early on. And then I became a tag fighter, and then I studied Wing Chun for 10 years. I then decided that, you know, to be the most well-rounded fighter in the world, which is what I wanted to do, as, say, Frank Shamrock wanted to do, I would have to learn to grapple. And so I sought out, through Benny Urquidez, I sought out Gene LeBell. My firstborn son is named Luca LeBell Perretti. I became one of Gene LeBell's first 4 black belts. I trained with the Machados, was subsequently kicked out of their school for starting this thing called extreme fighting, which they were not approving of. And so I always wanted to see who was the best, and I was a light guy. I fought at 139. You fought at 155 at your lightest. I'm taller than he is. You can see that I was a lean guy. So with that in mind, you know, I wanted to be the best fighter I possibly could, so I knew things had to be done in weight classes. Because even in boxing, you know, I thought the smaller guys were the better guys. I thought big guys accept mediocrity very easily. And in a nutshell, that's where it went. I'm a perfectionist, and I wanted to do the best I could for the sport. And there were a lot of people biting at my heels, and there were a lot of people in the ears of the people I worked for. I was brought to the UFC because the UFC put my show, Extreme Fighting, out of business.
So what was your experience with the UFC, and then why did it discontinue? I think what people
Meyerowitz was fun to work with. He would say, "That was a great show, John. I don't want to put lightweights on. I don't want to put women on. I don't want to do this and that." He liked heavyweights, and that's what he liked to do. Meyerowitz was fun to work with, but we had, you know, differences of opinion on how the sport should go. Obviously, you know, Extreme Fighting was my show. I already had the weight classes. I already had those rules. You know, I had made, you know, the gloves, and coined mixed martial arts.
What's your reaction to the state of MMA, which is really more or less the UFC, even though there are plenty of other promotions? What's your assessment of the sport, and where does it need to go?
I have no idea where it needs to go. I think as promoters, the UFC is like Barnum and Bailey. You know, they're maybe the greatest promoters that have ever been. But, you know, we gave birth to these guys on third base, and they think they hit a triple. So I'm not really impressed. I think the talent pool, there's no scouting. And, you know, they say that, you know, they have a matchmaker, but really they have a fight coordinator. It's a different thing than I did, as you can attest to. So I really think that, you know, if I was scouting for the UFC, I'd be on an airplane. I'd be walking through every little dirty gym, as I did all over the world, you know, where a lot of guys got hepatitis B. And I'd be training, you know, to see how these guys, I can't train anymore, I'm 56. But, you know, and also I would keep an idea solid in my head that, you know, that these matches had to be as good and as tight as possible. That was what I wanted to do from the beginning.
Background to the sport and to your story, and I think to let you leave after just 7 minutes would be a disservice to any mixed martial arts fan, because there's so much more to know. I'm learning here, and to be honest, I'm grateful to folks like you that I even have a sport to work in. If you guys didn't do what you did before, it was a popular thing where you get t-shirts for free, I wouldn't have a sport that I love that welcomed me in to work in. So I take my hat off to both of you for doing that. We're going to, just for that reason, for giving the sport the service and honor it deserves, we're going to bring John back, and we're going to talk to him for another segment on another episode. So now you have to keep watching the show, even though we're still on it.
It's more coming. We're going to use that for tomorrow. So if you have to go, go. Come back 24 hours after.
There it is, and he did the math for you. Thanks for watching My Combat Channel News. We'll see you again tomorrow. More show, more Mr. John Peretti, more of us. You got to give a little, take a little.